Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today we're going to talk about an article from Frostbites that's titled Google Mandates Android Apps to Pay 30% Cut on Play Store from 2021. Let's talk about what this means. So thanks for checking out this video, and this will be an interesting little discussion, and we'll talk here a little bit about the difference between Google and Apple and why there's certainly a lot more criticism on Apple than Google and why. First and foremost, this article here, it says Google mandates Android apps to pay 30% cut on Play Store from 2021. Now, that sounds like, oh, Google's making it worse, just like Apple. Well, there's actually a little caveat to this. The real title should be they're going to be enforcing a 30% cut from Play Store because that actually has been in their policy for a long time. Why do we hear about it with Apple and not with Google? And why is this likely to not do much more except give us more awareness of Play Store applications? Well, the difference is Google has also had this policy where if an app was purchased on the Play Store or had in-app purchases, it is required to utilize the Google Play services, but Google has not generally enforced that. Kind of like, don't put malware in, and they don't seem to not enforce that because we're getting more malware from the Play Store than most of the other Play Stores I'm aware of. Now, granted, I'm not particularly familiar with a lot of different Play Stores, so I'm sure there are a lot of scammy ones full of malware out there, and you have to be careful. That is the thing Apple is trying to avoid. So with Apple, it is a very secure place, but the problem with Apple is there is no way to install an app on your device without using the Play services outside of a lot of weird little hacks. I know somebody's going to be like, yes, you can. Here's a link to how. And no, that's not valid because it still requires an Apple an Apple account. It requires you to download it. It requires you to have iTunes, your device. There's a lot of little nuances. There's also things like getting an Apple developer's account. You can do it utilizing that method as well. But for the general population, there's no way you can download a standalone application directly from the Software Center or from an alternative Play Store and put that on the iOS device. That is where Apple is running into most of the legal scrutiny because that is a monopoly. That is something that here in the United States is something that is written into law, but Apple still gets away with it right now. But we are getting a lot more people battling this because if I want to get an Apple device now, and this is another argument why they are getting away with it, because I can always choose not to use an Apple product. But if you choose to use an Apple product, you're locked into their particular ecosystem. I get that argument as well. And honestly, if you're not going to be modifying your phones and you're needing a smartphone, Apple is intrinsically more secure than is Android. And so as far as, security and privacy, to be perfectly honest, the Google Play Store has a lot more malware in it than you will ever find in the iOS store. Not that iOS store is perfectly pure, but that's really the point. Now, what this article is doing is it is bringing up the information that Google is going to be enforcing this rule. It's basically the same rule that Apple has. Any payment processing used on an application in the Play Store has to give 30% of it to Google. Except I think Google has a few more exceptions for things like charities and stuff like that Apple really came on fire for recently. However, that being said, what they are doing is any application submitted to the Google Play Store after January 20th, 2021, those have to already be in compliance with the policy. Anything that's already on the Play Store, they have until September 20th, 2021 to correct those. Let me make sure I have those dates right. It is September 30th, 2021, and I think it is just January 20th. That's not actually covered in this article. It's on Google's actual statement on their website. Now, where do these differ and why is this probably a good thing for us in the FOSS community? Well, it's a good thing in that if more developers are forced to give Google the 30%, they're going to take it upon themselves to market alternative ways to download their apps. And that means they're going to point us to alternative app stores. Whether they are offering the download themselves for sideloading, which is what Android allows and Apple does not. That's why Google is not going to get in trouble over this, whereas Apple could. Because if I have my device, I cannot put something on it from an external store. But what we have in the Android world is a variety of different app stores. And in Android 12, which is what is aligning with this particular change in policy, they're making it easier to install extra stores. So we'll still see how that's going to turn out. Hopefully that turns out really well, but we'll have to see what that looks like when it comes on down the pipeline. But as far as Android is concerned, you can utilize a variety of different stores or no app store at all. You can go on and download a variety of different applications from FOSS locations and manually sideload them. This is actually what I do on my Lineage phone. While I could download the F-Droid store, put it on my device and utilize that, the fact of the matter is, A, I don't want my phone to constantly be notifying me every time it sees an update. Let me do my updates on my own schedule. And B, I really don't search for apps to put on my device. So I have no need for a store that I can hunt down the latest and greatest app. Everything I need is already on my device, and I don't use apps on my device on a widespread scale anyway. But I have the option to always go in, download, and update something manually. Now, that being said, there are other stores that will help you out on Android as well. Aurora is an excellent store where you can grab apps that you might only be able to find on the Google Play Store, and you can sideload those through the Aurora store. Well, it's not sideloading, it's installing through the Aurora store. So you can download the Aurora store app, install that on your phone, and utilize that as your store. That will find applications that are on the Google Play Store. Now, some of those may not work if you don't have MicroG or Google Play services installed, but that is, again, the power of Android, is that we can utilize a phone build that does not have that stuff built in. So while FOSSbytes comes out with the article saying Google is going to start charging 30% for in-app purchases, the reality is that policy was already in place. It's just that Google wasn't enforcing it. Now we're bringing attention to it. Now people will be forced to utilize this. This is a good thing for the FOSS community because it will tell big stores like Epic got into a fight with Google over it. Epic now can utilize its massive budget. They want people to install the thing, and frankly, it's better for them if they install it somewhere that's not taking a 30% cut. And so they have an incentive to market app stores that are not Google Play Store so somebody can download and utilize the apps there. So Google's change in enforcing this policy is going to help the custom ROM community, and I am all for this. But for those people that want to utilize Google Play services and give the 30% cut, I'm okay with that too because they have provided alternatives. So that is kind of an important discussion here, and I really wanted to bring this article up and talk about what's going on in case you're starting to see this, because it's a really good discussion and why I like FOSS applications and why I like Android over Apple because of the customizability that we have. I can remove the Google Play services, I can secure it down. Sure, there's a little bit of back and forth, and if you want an excellent breakdown of all of these, have a look at TechLore's latest video from his Incognito series, which looks at your Android operating systems, the security and privacy of mobile operating systems. I'll go ahead and link that here in the video. Have a look at that. It gives you the breakdown of which is more secure and what scenarios. It talks about lockable bootloaders, bootloaders that do not necessarily lock, and all these different nuances, and talk about Lineage and Graphene, iOS, Android, and he touches a little bit on the Linux phones, which are still in development. But nevertheless, what this article is doing, it raises attention to what is possible in the Google Play Store. It raises attention to what Google is doing, and that is actually going to help the community because they have an open model, whereas Apple has a closed model, and that's why Apple is probably not going to endure the scrutiny, whereas Google probably will. those are my thoughts and my takes. Let me know also your favorite app stores down below, because there are a lot of them out there. I am not particularly familiar with a lot of them. I've used Aurora, I've used F-Droid, and the app store that is on EOS, which I think is theirs, but I can't remember for sure. And if I'm wrong about that, I'll go ahead and link that in the comment, in the pinned comment down there. So anyway, thanks for coming along. I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux. Thank you for watching this video from Switched to Linux. This channel would not be possible without the backing of the program supporters scrolling on the screen now. You can be a supporter at Patreon at patreon.com/TOMM or at thinklifemedia.com. I also want to thank the open source community who creates such excellent software that makes producing this show possible. Please remember to support your software communities. Thank you, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.